السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
السلام.
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Jazakallah khair, Shaykh Abdul Rahim, for giving me a chance to bring benefit to the few brothers that are here and our brothers and sisters who are listening in Canada. This needs no introduction, so I'm going to zip through things, inshallah. So what we're going to talk about today is just a brief synopsis of what is the current status quo, as Hazrat Maulana Dr. Mahmood Chandia alluded to towards the end of his speech. Then we're going to do a little bit on symptom sorter, how to recognize common mental health problems. And then we're going to talk about how to help yourself, and also we're going to talk about how to strengthen your faith, because that's paramount. So this is where it gets a bit depressing, actually. So across the globe, approximately 450 million people are suffering with a particular type of mental health, okay? And I've geared this around the Canadians because that's who we're talking to tonight. About 6.7 million Canadians are affected, so that's 1 in 5. Interestingly, it's pretty much similar to here. It's roughly 1 in 5. By the age of 40, and this is worse than UK, nearly 1 in 2 Canadians have had a mental health illness. That's an astronomical number, actually. And of those, 70%, the actual symptoms start in childhood. And in Canada, so Sheikh Abdul Rahim sent me this morning. He said, take a look at this. And I was looking at the statistics, the current statistics in Canada. The suicide rate in Canada is approximately 11 people per day. I mean, we ask Allah for afiyah and salama, and anyone who's struggling with this, who's listening in particular online, if you are one of these people, seek help, and I'll talk you through how to do that. And when I was reading this morning, I was in tears this morning because, these are our brothers sisters in humanity, Bani Adam. We share that ukhuwa. In 2016, 50% of the suicides in Canada were under the age of 19, which is just, it's heartbreaking, isn't it? That this is what's going on. So what happened with, COVID happened, qadar Allah, mashallah, and it just compounded the problem because people experienced significant loss of income, loss of social connections and what's known as normality. And an increased pressure of things like homeschooling, managing children. If you have children, you're homeschooling. It's really hard to keep them motivated. It's really hard to keep them, engaged at home. And it clearly has an impact on children, especially if children are in a household where the parents are struggling with mental health as well. And in this country, I didn't look at Canada, but in this country, 1 in 4 children have a parent who is struggling with a mental health illness. So it impacts them as well. There's a lot of uncertainty of the future. When there's uncertainty in a human being's life, a lot of people freak out. Okay, they just, a lot of anxiety kicks in about tomorrow and so forth. And what we're seeing now with social media, there's a lot of scaremongering. There's a lot of fake news and tons of misinformation, and it's driving everybody insane. So this is what we're looking at now. For us, predominantly the people that are watching are going to be South Asian of origin or descent. There was a study done in London in I think 4 or 5 years ago, and they asked the question, why is it that Asians don't seek, South Asians or BAME community in general, but they were looking at South Asians in particular, so that's India, Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis and so forth. Why is it that they don't seek help? And the conclusion was that right at the top there's a sense of shame or sharam, that you're not allowed to have emotions. It's just something that you don't do. You're not allowed to have emotions. You're not allowed to be sad, basically, and so that results in a sense of keeping it secret, having a fear factor that I can't tell anybody how I feel, so I'm just going to put on a front, basically. A lot of the time, causes are misunderstood. So just there's a handful of brothers here, but if you were to guess, what do people blame mental health on? Jinn. It's just like the default. When something goes wrong, everything's jinn, right? And so the causes are misunderstood. And then there's a social pressure to conform. How many times have you heard this, that, Oh, when I grew up in wherever I came from, I had, my dad and his granddad, they had 24 kids and they used to go to work in their barefoot, and they might have, and that's fair, and they had a hard life. But that common notion of just get on with it, it just doesn't help, does it? People with mental health are not valued. They're looked down on, they're shunned. And interestingly, this came out as well, that marriage proposals are actually, prospects are actually reduced. Because no one will marry somebody if they tell them that I have a diagnosis of depression or anxiety or both or bipolar. It's just not going to happen. And this is what they concluded. And also, one of the conclusions is that in our communities there's just too much of this. If there is one community that should, be a model for other communities in the concept of not backbiting, it should be us. Because of the shiddah, of the intensity of the prohibition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to this, and the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the gravity of this sin, but it's just like, you can't get away from it. Any majlis you go to, you cannot get away from it. It's terrible. And ultimately what happens is that there's a reluctance to seek help as a result. And so with social media now, you can tell the world that you are happy as Larry. For the Canadians, that's an English phrase, isn't it? Happy as Larry, and your life is great, and you're super happy, you're super busy, you're super everything, when actually deep down you're not happy, you're miserable, and potentially you could be suicidal as well. So you put on a lot of filters because it's just easier to be that way. But essentially, I've got many patients like this. The whole week that I've had, if I appear a bit drained, this whole week in my clinic, I have seen nothing but depression and anxiety. Really. I've had a 14-year-old who wants to commit suicide. A few months ago, we had an 18-year-old who did. She hung herself. It's just, and we need to help each other, okay? This is the whole point of this conversation. So key messages, look, mental health problems are common. It's the biggest disabling illness in the world, okay, mental health problems. Anyone can be affected. It's not necessarily a sign of, failure or you're weak and so forth. People can and they do recover. Okay, it's not a death wish. Okay, and I have to say this. Okay, if I offend anybody, I'm sorry, but I have to say it. It's not a sign of weak iman at all. Our ulama, the year the Prophet ﷺ, so the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, they were expelled, exiled from Mecca, and they were in the valley of Abu Talib for 3 years. No sooner did they come out, Abu Talib and Khadija radiallahu anha passed away in close proximity. And the ulama of biographies, they've explained that year was known as what? Amul Huzn, the year of sadness. When Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was with the Prophet ﷺ, he became anxious in the cave when they were emigrating away from Mecca to Medina Munawwara. And when the Quraysh came to the entry of the cave, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu became a bit anxious, what was said to him? La tahzan, inna Allah ma'ana. That he was told, don't grieve. In other words, our ulama explained to us, it's okay to have emotions. It's not a sign of weak iman. What's important is that you don't stay there. Okay, and this is what we're going to talk about. Okay, so mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of. Okay, anybody who's listening. Okay, and it's nothing to be ashamed about in terms of talking about it as well. So let's talk. We're going to go through a bit of symptom sorter. Okay, so if this resonates with you, just follow me. Okay, because inshallah it will help you. Depression is classified as low mood. Okay. But it has to last for a long time. It's not like, Liverpool got beat 3-1 today and I'm going to be miserable for the evening. That's not depression, okay? So it lasts for, I'm very happy saying that, by the way, because I'm from Manchester. But depression is low mood that lasts for a long time. And the key point here is that it affects your everyday life. It impacts your ability to function. You can't brush your teeth. You can't, look after your own personal hygiene. You can't pay that bill. You can't engage with another human being. You can't work, okay? So the key here is that you have depressive symptoms, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but it impacts your functional ability. And it's very different to just low mood that you can overcome with, simple things. Then you have, so that's like a brief, and you have severe spectrum of symptoms as well. And the severe symptoms are suicide or thoughts of suicide, thoughts of self-harm, basically. And then acting on these thoughts, you're on the very severe spectrum. Or if you don't have those, if you have complete loss of function. So I've had patients where they cannot physically get out of bed. They have complete loss of function. That's on the severe spectrum. And in some severe cases, they have psychotic symptoms. It's like, imagine the brain crashing. They hallucinate. They have visual hallucinations. They see things that aren't there. They hear things that aren't there. It's very real. Okay, so that's on the severe spectrum. But in terms of symptomology, if you can see that, I hope you can, and those that are listening online, I hope you can see that. These are just general symptoms. And what you'll see is that there's physical symptoms as well. People feel pain. They physically feel pain in their limbs. People feel this sense of in their stomach, this sense of pending doom. It's reality. Okay, this is what they feel. Along with depression, you can have symptoms of anxiety, or separately. Okay, what's interesting about anxiety? So anxiety is when you lose your sense of self-security for whatever reason. Okay. And you end up with a plethora of symptoms. And unlike depression, anxiety feels different in nearly every human being. They experience different symptoms compared to depression, which is quite similar. So you can have a look. And those that are online, you can see. There's no need for me to repeat some of the symptoms. But again, remember, there's physical symptoms with this. And what can happen is you can have an overlap. It's really common actually. You can have depression and anxiety together. So you can have symptoms of depression, and that can make you anxious about how you feel, and then you end up with clinical anxiety. Or you can have clinical anxiety, and then because of that you feel down, and you can end up with symptoms of depression, and they often do overlap. Okay. Now, so just quickly, because that's the easy bit, but the reason why I'm here is to talk about how to help you. Okay. So the most important thing is seeking help. And the first part of seeking help for anybody that's struggling is acknowledge what you're feeling. That's the most important thing. If there's a problem, the first thing to do is to just acknowledge that I have a problem. Okay. Once you acknowledge it, really, Sheikh Dr. Muhammad Jandia was saying that, look, Allah is compassionate. Okay. وَيُحَذِّرُكُمُ اللَّهُ نَفْسَهُ وَاللَّهُ رَؤُوفٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. Ajib verse of the Quran. Allah says, I'm warning you about me, and then he says, Allah is compassionate, so, it's an ibrah when you read Quran. Don't just recite, read it and learn the language as well. Don't let your life pass by and you haven't once thought that I can't understand the language of what, Allah's speaking to me with. So acknowledge it, and then just understand that it's okay. You'll be fine because you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you have Allah, you have everything. Okay, and that's your starting point with this. Okay, you'll be fine, inshallah. But it takes being gentle with yourself and having compassion with yourself. This is what I tell my patients. I say, look, I ask my patients when they're struggling with depression or anxiety, I say, look, who do you love the most? And what do you think they say? It's usually parents, siblings. Okay, that's the two that they say. And then I say to them, would you make sure that your mom gets a good night's sleep? Absolutely. Would you make sure that your dad eats 3 meals a day? Would you make sure that your child is comfortable psychologically? And they say, absolutely. I said, well, you need to do that for yourself. It's really important to have that mindset for yourself, but it starts by having compassion with yourself and remembering that you have Allah with you throughout the whole journey. Okay. Now I'll give you a few tips. Obviously, speak to your doctor, and I've done this for the Canadians, because for those that are here, if you just listen to what I did, a year's gone by, I did this with Sheikh Abdul Rahim, the mental health, and there's lots of resources on that one. It should be on the YouTube channel. So this is for Canada. This website, Mind Your Mind, it seems to be a platform for Canadians to access loads of organizations. So it has phone numbers, it has crisis lines, it has it for adults, it has it for children, it has it for the elderly. Take a look and navigate your way through. It seems to me that just like England, there's a lot of self-help out there where you may not even need to see a doctor. I don't know how the Canadian model works, but seek help from a doctor and seek help yourself from the voluntary organizations that are there. The resources, so you'll be able to see this online, these are primarily from England, but the internet's opened up the whole world. Okay, so feel free to look at them and navigate your way through them. They're very, very helpful resources, okay? And this is for young people. Again, this is in England, but you can utilize them across the world. I'm not sure about Kooth. So anybody who has a young, under the age of 18, a child basically, who's struggling with mental health, take a look at Kooth. It's a new thing that's come out. It's recommended by the NHS. Your child can access it. And if they're having a moment or they need somebody to talk to and they can't talk to you or their doctor or their therapist, it's on the other end of their phone. It seems to be a really good app to have. Unfortunately, a lot of us, when we struggle, what do we turn to as a coping mechanism? Drugs and alcohol. Look, we shouldn't shy away from this. This is there in our communities. It's there, okay, where our brothers and sisters, even the ones that are outwardly practicing, who what we see as outwardly practicing, I've seen them. There are plenty of brothers and sisters out there, sisters as well, who are struggling with using alcohol or marijuana, drugs, etc., to try and cope. Okay, so what I feel is that there must be an open space to have a conversation about how Muslims are feeling and how to help them. And look, in your area, so in Canada or in England, wherever you are, I guarantee you there'll be community initiatives to help you get through drugs and alcohol. They're everywhere. You can Google them and you'll find them in your community. I also believe that masajids, mosques, have a vital role. A masjid for many people is a safe haven for people to come and just have that, peace and like a scaffolding around them where they can not worry about being judged or being rebuked and so forth. So, if it means setting up something in a masjid, what's the problem? If it's a safe haven for people to come and talk, do it. It's not hard to do either. In Trafford, we've set up, because it's gone online now because of COVID, we set up a well-being service, and some of the things that are coming through is shocking, but it's good that we've done it because these people were too scared to go to a doctor and they'd much prefer to speak to us because we're part of the masjid. So think about setting it up. But this is what I really want to talk about, okay, because that's the easy bit, okay? So what do you do about it? Okay, that's what I want to talk about. So one thing I want to make clear is, look, what in anything in life, okay, it starts with you. If you are struggling with anything in life, it starts with you. We, as doctors, healthcare professionals, we can advise you, we can guide you, we can signpost you. The ulama can signpost you and guide you and give you guidance. But it's useless if you, as an individual, don't take the first steps to address the problems. Okay, so what I want you to do if you're struggling with this is encourage yourself and tell yourself and take the courage and say, look, it starts with me. Most people who are at rock bottom, who get through it, they have a conversation with themselves in their mind and they say, look, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. This is it. I am not going to do this anymore and I'm going to change. And you find that those people who have those conversations with themselves, they have what's called breakthrough. So hit the reset button. And just, if you can, just tell yourself, anybody struggling, just tell yourself, look, this is it, stop, no more. It's literally a reset button because you can, okay? And take some of these steps. And so I've done this in a stepwise process and I hope you resonate. First thing I want you to do, if anybody's struggling with mental health issues, is just cut out anything that's toxic in your life, okay? Cut out anything that's toxic in your life. You have to help yourself here, okay? Now look, there are certain people in your life, and you know who they are. There are certain people in your life who drive you mad, okay? And you know who they are, okay? Now look, our Sharia has given us boundaries of what's permissible, what's not permissible. So take shura with ulama about how to do this. But let go of people that are toxic in your life and take advice from the ulama of how to do this, okay? Because there are rules involved with this with our tradition. And it's not an act of cruelty, it's an act of self-care. So people that are toxic, some people, they help you grow. Some people, they burn you, okay? Some people, they drain you. Some people just drive you insane. You have to let go of toxic people in your life. Number 2, food. This is ridiculously important, okay? Ridiculously important. That if you were to go on any diet on the planet, okay, go on the Mediterranean diet. If you can, tweak it to what's called the PIOPI diet. Google it, okay? PIOPPI. written by Dr. Asim Malhotra, who's a fantastic cardiologist in London. There was a study then called the SMILE study. So they had two groups of people, both had depression, same scale. One group went on the Mediterranean diet. Another group had just a non-Mediterranean diet, but also had medication to help them through depression. Okay, it's obvious what I'm going to say. After 6 months, which group recovered? The group that was on the diet. Okay, in terms of percentage, more people in the group who just went on diet, no medication, they recovered, and also they had less what's called relapses. So they didn't go back to depression after they recovered. Far less compared to those who were on a non-Mediterranean diet and were on medication. So food is everything. You have to, you can't have a diet that's rich in sugary foods or processed foods or junk and so forth. You have to eliminate it from your diet completely. Okay, you have to go on, because you are what you eat. So consider this, a Mediterranean diet. You might need to let go of your sal and roti. I'm sorry. Okay, you might need to let go of it. Because in all fairness, and I don't like talking like this because I end up offending a lot of people, but you have to say it because we're adults. We have to have ultra-adult conversations, okay? An upna diet in our I don't know what's like in Canada, but in our lands, every day doesn't suit your physique in this country, okay? If it was hot and you've got a manual job, it's fine, but it's cold in Northern England all the time, okay? It's not the best of diets, and I could go on, but I'm not going to. So Mediterranean, it's a toxic food. Get rid of it, okay? I'm glad Dr. Sam mentioned this, okay, already. Phones, okay? Social media. I'm not saying this to brag. I have never had a smartphone, okay? And I feel like I have my brain. It's mine. Look, people will laugh, right? This is my phone. My patients call it drug dealer's phone. So no one can monitor me. And I can remember Hazrat Rahimahullah, I was with him in his house and he wanted to send me something on WhatsApp. I said, Hazrat, look at my phone. He said, Bo Hariwat. He said, don't get one either. So I'm not going to get one, inshallah, unless I have to. But the point is that one thing I've noticed is that, look, it's toxic. Like, look, you are what you read, you are what you watch. Khalas. The ulama, they say that your eyes and your ears, babani maftuhani ila al-qalb, is two open doors to your heart. You have to protect your heart. Your heart is where the gaze of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala falls on. This is what defines you with Allah. And that's all that should matter. And if it's like open for like onslaught, what are you doing? You see what I mean? You have to, and I don't have a television either, and I encourage you to get rid of your television, okay? Just so you're not bombarded with just stuff that just eats up your brain, okay? But those of you that do, if you get a chance, I've watched it on the internet. If you get a chance, watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Social Dilemma. Just watch it, okay? I'm not pro watch this, watch that, okay? I don't have a television. But watch Social Dilemma, and you'll understand why the riots happened in America. It's just unbelievable what this machine can do to your brain. So just, cut it out. And I'll tell you why. One of my friends, he contacted me and he said, my mum, she's 60 years old and she lives on her own. And she's become really anxious because of coronavirus. I said, how? She said, well, she lives on her own. So when she's on her own, where does she get her contacts from? What does she go on? WhatsApp. Okay? Unfortunately, I'm sorry. If I offend people, I'm sorry, okay? Some of us are stupid. We incessantly forward messages on to our long group without one thought in our mind that this could go to somebody who's on their own, and I could scare them stiff with just completely with some stuff about coronavirus. She's developed clinical anxiety because the only thing she's got to have, because of isolation, is WhatsApp to get in contact with her family and so forth. But she also gets messages from all these, anti-G groups, that just forward, and also Uncle G's as well, who forward things on, and she's developed clinical anxiety. Before you forward something, just have a think. Who's on my group? How would it impact them? And obviously verify it. Verify what you read. Like Mara's already mentioned it, that we have a tradition of sanad. We don't just take something from anywhere without checking who said this, what's this person, where did they get this from, etc., etc. Just be really careful because it can drive you mad, and I've seen it. It just drives people mad. This internet. So just cut it out. And interestingly, last year there was a study done people, young people, who just cut out from Facebook. That was it, just Facebook for 1 month. Said, look, they have reported lower symptoms of depression, anxiety, and they were far more happy with life and have more life satisfaction. Imagine if you got rid of it, or imagine if you never had it. You know, just think like that. You won't miss out. Look, I don't have one. I still have friends. I still have friends. And it was like, you know, real friends, Moana. Real friends that when you're in trouble, when you need them, they'll be there. Exactly. When it's time for, you know that your friend, who's your real friend, when they send you an e-text, it's not the one that they send to 100. They put your name on, properly. Salam Zakaria, how are you? How's your son Isa? How's they remember everything. They're your true friends. Do you understand? And some of my friends who was uni, they said, well, how are we going to keep in contact? They said, we were fine before WhatsApp. Just ring me. What's the big deal? You understand? Really, get off it. You'll find that your and also look. I had a patient, right? She was 16, 17. Have a guess how many hours she spent. She was depressed. We talked about this. Have a guess how many hours she spent on her phone. 10 hours a day. How? I have no idea. Now, if any of us are doing that, okay, just flip it on its head. If you had 10 hours a day, what would you do with your time? I'll tell you what you can do. There was a brother in our community, since first lockdown, which was March last year, in 9 months, he's 15 years old, he did his hifz. That's how you use your time. He's made his dunya, he's made his akhirah, he's made his akhirah for his family, 10 people who, we know the benefits of being there. That's how you spend your time. There was a 9-year-old girl who I think it took her a year. So since the first lockdown, 9-year-old girl, she couldn't even read Alif Ba Ta, right? And because homeschooling, no school runs, and madrasa was online, there was a bit more time. She did her hifz, finished it. Do you hear about stories about great ulama of the past, like Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, who memorized Quran when he was 7. He was a mufti when he was 12. These sort of stories. A 9-year-old girl in our community, in Trafford where I live. Okay? Let's consider it. Exercise, another toxic thing. Don't be still.
Use groups, less groups. Be on WhatsApp.
Yeah, just be on the ones that are beneficial. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being on beneficial groups. But like every group, because it's a good tool. You understand? It's a good tool. Like doing this across the world is a good tool. But just anything that's nonsense, get rid of it. Dini is not a problem. There's no problem with dini groups, no problem. But anything else, just get off it. Exercise, okay? Don't be inactive, okay? It's not good for you, khalas, okay? But be active. What we do know is that if you are physically active, and all it takes is 150 minutes of physical activity a week, which equates to 22 minutes a day of walking, that's it, okay? If you do that, people reported, 30% of patients have reported a complete reduction in their symptoms of depression and anxiety. I had one patient, Allah save us from this, he was happily married, 2 kids, wife had an affair, divorced, went from a big plush house to a small flat, looking at 4 walls all day, depressed as hell, wanted to commit suicide, didn't want to go on medication. Allah convinced him to run through my words. When he sees me now for his follow-ups, he says, you know what, Dr. Goga, he said, if you didn't convince me to run, I'd be dead. Ajib. Okay, consider it. I shouldn't use this term, but it's magic. Exercise is a natural way of releasing endorphins in your body. Do it, and you need to stay physically fit and healthy. Okay. Now, the next thing to figure out of what to do is controlling the mind. Okay, and it's based on, look, in essence, and this is what I've been telling my patients for a year now, over and over again. Look, you and I, we have no control of anything. Everything's out of our control. But the one thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your maker, my maker, has given us control over is what? Is our mind. Allah has given us control over it. Okay? And so all it takes is change your mind by changing your perception. That's it. And the way to do that, and this is what I'm encouraging anybody who's struggling with mental health problems, is seek therapy. Something called CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognition is the way you think. Behavior is the way you behave, and therapy is to reset it into a healthy medium. When something wrong happens to us, it can be anything. It could be COVID, it could be loss of job, it could be, being ill, whatever. Okay, you have thoughts. Okay, these are natural. Nothing wrong with that. That thought creates an emotion, which is a feeling. That emotion will drive towards a behavior, and the cycle continues. And you can have negative thoughts that lead to negative feelings that lead to negative behavior. Okay? A therapist, what they'll do is teach you how to retrain your brain to have what's called helpful ways of thinking, not positive thoughts, okay? Helpful ways of thinking that will then push you through to have helpful emotions and then therefore helpful behavior, and the cycle will continue. I don't have time to talk about it, but take a look at it, okay? Because this is the basis of therapy of retraining your brain. I want you to have a go. Now, as an example, just as a quick example, what they talk about is just putting things in perspective. So just imagine if, for example, something not nice happens to you and you're having a moment where you feel alarmed or you feel stressed, okay? It can be anything. So this is called the stop technique, okay? The first thing they ask you to do is stop, pause, and then the T is take a deep breath. Now just do it. There's a few brothers here. Just take a deep breath in and then hold it. Deep breath in and now hold it. Okay, breathe. And those of you that are not listening online, because the majority are online, just try it. What did you notice about your thought pattern as you held your breath? What did you notice?
Stop.
It stopped. Why does it stop? Physiologically, why does it stop? You're on survival mode.
Yeah.
Your body's telling you, breathe. It hasn't got time to think of anything else. Okay, that's a proof that you can cut out your thoughts like this. If you want another way of doing it, this is our tradition. Ask a shaykh to teach you how to do muraqabah. And you practice and you practice and you practice, and I'm telling you, you can be immensely stressed, and in a moment you can stop it. Because our religion has given us these techniques. Okay, so you take a deep breath and you stop, or you focus on your breathing, then you observe what's going on here. Am I tense? Is my jaw clenched? Can I feel my heart beating really fast? Is my breathing fast? Are my thoughts just going out of control? Okay, and then you step back and you put things into perspective, and you do it over and over and over and over again. And what perspective is taking a bird's eye view. What's going on here? Am I overreacting? What would my best friend say? What would my parents say if they were here with me right now? One thing I tell my patients who are Muslim, I say, just ask yourself, when you're in a crisis moment, there's nothing stopping you imagining that the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is next to you. There's nothing stopping you. And just ask yourself, if the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was here with me right now, what would he tell me to do? And you know your heart will tell you the right answer. He'll say to you, what will he say to you? La tahsan, inna Allah ma'ana. He'll say that to you if he was next to you. That's the sort of thought. Now, the more you do it, it's like going to the gym. The more you do it, the better you get at it, okay? Now, it's all about, once you do that, okay, it's all about the F word and not what you're thinking, okay? It's about focus. It's what your brain, what your mind chooses to focus on. If all the lights went off here and we just had a torch, okay, what's the only thing you can see? What the light shines on. That's our brain, okay? But the good news is, just like you can move your torch around to see what's going on, you can shift your brain to focus on whatever you want it to focus on, okay? So when you're in a stressful period, yep, okay, do these things, but also have a think about this. This is called the wheel of life, okay? Remember, there are only a few things. There are a handful of things. And what's really interesting is that, look, with COVID, it's been a year now, right? A lot has happened, especially with psychological stress because of the impact of COVID, right? Just have a guess. What are the top 2 things that human beings in this country value more than anything else? Just have a guess. Top 2. First one, my health. More than anything else, I value my health. Okay? And don't dabble in your health. It's a gift, it's an amana. Make sure you get it right, okay? Second thing, family. Not money. No one cares about money. The people have realized. I had a patient, she said to me, I used to go shopping every week. And now I realize, what was I doing? It didn't even make me happy, but I thought it did. You know, things, it doesn't make you happy. Health and family. So there are only a few things in life that really matter. Forget everything else. So in no particular order, I'll just quickly go through this, okay? Let's start with money. Human beings have worked out that they just need enough, okay? There's this push for people to become financially independent and be millionaires, and you know what I'm talking about, right? That's not part of our tradition, okay? That wasn't even a question in the Muslim's life, okay? It's just, have a career, nothing wrong with that, but work towards what's enough, and then that's it. And that excess that you have, don't use that to just show the world what you have. That's not our tradition. Our tradition is use that to help somebody who doesn't have anything. That's our tradition, okay? Growth in your career. Take a job or look for a job that's meaningful, that brings a change to the world around you, okay? That not just it brings in income. I've got plenty of patients who are filthy rich, but they're miserable as hell. because they tell me that we're in a job that I hate. I earn a shed load of money, but I'm not happy because they don't have meaningful jobs. Do a job that's meaningful, that changes somebody's life. Contribute to your community. Make a difference to the people around you. You'll feel alive doing this, okay? This is psychologist, connects, whatever your religion is. But for us Muslims, connect with your Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our ulama, they say, La sa'id illa man as'adahu Allah. There's no one that's happy except who Allah makes happy. You have to connect with your Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala and engage with Allah and take the way of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Relationships, family, people say family is important to me. Your parents, your brothers, your sister, your children, your wife, your husband, your lifelong partner, your close friends. If you're having problems with them, you have to make it work. And you know what? You can, at any point, you can just say, look, let's start afresh. You can, at any point, nothing's stopping you from just saying, let's start afresh. You have to make it work. Why? Because the most pleasure in life comes from relationships. Most pleasure in life and most pain comes from relationships when they go wrong. So you have to make it work, okay? And then your health, which we've talked about. If you focus on these things and you really try and make it work, everything else, it won't be a big deal for you. Okay, and lastly, I'll finish on this. Okay, look, there is room to strengthen your faith. It's not weak iman, but there's always room to strengthen your faith. Okay, there's always room. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Baqarah that sometimes, things happen, or we're told to do things that maybe we don't like, but there's goodness in it. Okay, and we're told to stay away from things that maybe we like, but we're told to stay away from it. But there's a problem in that. And then how does Allah end? Wallahu ya'lamu wa antum la ta'lamun. Allah knows and you don't know. So, some people who have really mastered this, who've experienced depression and anxiety, and they've connected with their faith, they take a step back and they say, look, Allah is Hakim. He can do whatever He wants. But He's also Hakim. There's a wisdom behind it. If I can't see it, that's fine. I trust in Allah. That's the sort of mind frame you want to have. The whole Quran is beautiful, but this is one of my favorite bunch of verses. Innal insana khuliqa halu'a. To the nearest meaning, if I get it wrong, tell me. To the nearest meaning, insan was created in a state of anxiety, perplexion. إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرُّ جَزُوعًا. When he's afflicted with evil or wrong or harm, he freaks out. Okay? وَإِذَا مَسَّهُ الْخَيْرُ مَنُوعًا. When goodness is given to him, he acts like a miserly person. I'm not going to share this with anybody. إِلَّا الْمُصَلِّينَ. There's a whole list of what comes after, but the first thing they say is إِلَّا الْمُصَلِّينَ. Okay? Abu al-Hasan al-Shadili, rahimahullah, the great Sufi scholar, where he was at a time where actually he was criticized a lot by some of the fuqaha, and they came to meet him to question him about Sufism. And this is narrated by the author of the Hikam. Sorry? Ibn Ata'allah. Jazakallah khair. He mentions this, that they came to him and they wanted to question him about Sufism because they had a problem with it. So as they came, he said to the fuqaha, he said, have you prayed? And they said, yes. He said, do you know how to pray? And they said, Taban, we don't know how to pray. Who doesn't know how to pray with the fuqaha? And he recited this verse. He said, have you prayed a prayer like this? That when you're afflicted by something, you don't freak out? And they all made tawbah and realized how important tasawwuf is, but following this. So engage in your prayer. If you are solid in your salah, one of the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you, according to our ulama, is that you have less perplexity in your life. You have to engage in your prayer. If you're not praying 5 times a day, you've got to pray 5 times a day. You've got to do it. And if you are praying 5 times a day, you've got to take it to another level. Pray your sunan and your nawafil. And if it's appropriate in your community where you are, go to the masjid. Don't settle for mediocre in your religion. You wouldn't settle for it in your career. Why are you settling for mediocre in your religion? Take it to as high level as you can. This is a prophetic prayer. These slides will be shared. I'm going to zip through this because I'm running out of time. Read this every morning, every night. This was a dua that the Prophet ﷺ gave to Abu Umama when he was in the masjid and he was really sad, because he said, "Humumun ghalabatni wa duyunun rakabatni." I have overcome with debt and sadness. And the Prophet ﷺ gave him this dua to read. And he said, my worries and my debt cleared just by reading this dua. Make it a habit, morning and evening. Okay, this is another one, a regular supplication of the Prophet ﷺ, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for afiyah in everything, well-being in everything. The Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba said that he would read this without fail, morning and evening, without fail. These are gifts that the Prophet ﷺ has given us. This is medication. This is a prescription. Okay, It's a prescription. You've got to do it twice a day without fail. Rahimahullah, our Hazrat Rahimahullah, who just drilled this into us in the last 3-4 years of his life. When you wake up in the morning, read this. In the evening, read this. That I'm pleased with Allah as my Lord, the Prophet ﷺ as my Prophet, and the Deen and Islam as my religion. And it's haqqun ala Allah. It's Allah said, He's made it a duty upon Himself that the one who reads this morning and evening, Allah will make him pleased. And he used to say, what is there not to be content with? Not happy, there's difference, but content with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many ni'mah has He given us? Look, how can we not be content? And he used to say, and this is what I loved about him, he said, look, get it into your mind that the Sahaba were in this state of whatever state we're in, we're happy Allah. We're content Allah. That's the state you want to reach. But what it takes is recognizing what blessings Allah has already given you and count them. And you know what's really interesting? Modern day psychologists, they tell us, to tell patients, count your blessings. Count what you've got. Our Prophet ﷺ told us this ages ago. Our Quran told us this ages ago. Okay? And just a few quotes from the ulama that I've benefited from, okay? That look, if constantly worrying about heartbreak over past events or incessantly planning for the future, you lose this moment now. What's that called in modern day psychology? Anybody know? Mindfulness. It's about now. But this is what our deen teaches us. You can't do anything of what's happened in the past. You can't. And you have no idea what's going to happen in the future. But you can drive yourself insane thinking about it, and you miss out on the blessings of now. That's the sort of narrative you want to have in your mind all the time. I love this quote. That this is from one of Imam al-Ghazali's teachers, rahimahullah. That leave the planning of all your affairs to the one who created you. This is called tafweed. This is called handing over. وَأُفَوِّدُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ in the Quran, that I'm handing my affairs over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then his teacher said, relax. Leave all your affairs to Allah and just relax, because He's the best in planning your life. Rumi, he said, look, Allah's planning for us is like the ant who goes onto a beautiful rug. Okay? And on the rug, he's going up and down and goes around in circles because he's following the pattern. He doesn't know where he's going. And the ant's saying to himself, who made this rug? It's all over the place. But what he can't see is who decorated this rug, who made this rug, the beauty of it, the bird's eye view. That's Allah. That's Allah. And you ask people who have had breakthrough, they've had really difficult periods in their life, and they have experienced depression, anxiety, and they've had breakthrough by doing these things. Every single one that I've spoken to have said that, if this didn't happen to me, what Allah planned, I don't know where I would have been. It was the best thing that happened to me because I found Allah. And if that's Allah's way of helping you find Allah, alhamdulillah. You understand? That's how you got to think. What does Allah want from me from this? And if it means that you find Allah through this, alhamdulillah, no problem. And last quote from Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, that look, shaitan loves it when a human being is sad because they start losing hope with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you have to have what's called husn dhan with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a good opinion with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that every single thing He does for you is in your interest, is in your benefit. And lastly, I'll say, don't just confine it to this world. We're not here forever. We're not. No one has lived forever. There's nothing in existence that's eternal except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is going to end one day. Okay? So you have to play the long game. And to play the long game, you have to firmly, root your belief in what your religion is. Amantu billahi wa man, one is yawmul akhir and akhirah. That we believe in that there's an afterlife. And that has to come to the forefront of your mind. Okay? It has to come to the forefront, because when that becomes a reality for you, okay, you know that when a musibah hits you and you have patience, you have sabr, you have contentment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's no action. If I'm wrong, because I'm not an alim, but if I'm wrong, you have to correct me. Okay, there's no action that Allah's mentioned in the Quran where the reward is endless, except what? Being in a state of patience. Okay, being in a state of patience. That's like one of our imams. He said it's like having a blank check with Allah and you're cashing in. If you're in a musibah, if you're in a situation where you're in a musibah and you have patience and trust with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it's okay and you will be okay. And even if it's not settled here, you have something there far greater than here. The Imam, he said, it's like having a blank check. You're cashing in. And that's the mindset of a Muslim, that it's okay. You're going through difficulties now. Inshallah, you'll have a breakthrough. You will. You'll find Allah through it. More importantly, hold on to this notion. It could be your entry into Jannah by this. And then you'll look back. You'll look back. Inshallah, all of us will be in paradise, okay? And we get to ask, what made me go in? Yeah. And if Allah says to you, it was that musibah, you'd say to Allah, I'd do it 1,000 times. I'd do that 1,000 times, Allah, if this is the reward. So, strengthen your faith, inshallah. Hope that was beneficial. Jazakallah khair. We'll stop there. Allah give us tawfiq to act on what we said, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.